We can pray. We are praying. We say thank you, Lord, for this wonderful time you have allowed us to have. We count it as a blessing. As we learn your words, may your Holy Spirit lead us throughout the study. In your name, Jesus, we pray. Amen. Last week, we were looking at the study about the sin and fall of the king of the south. Yeah, so just a summary, we wanted to understand the role of the king of the south in prophecy. And we checked in Daniel chapter 11, verse 5 to 16, Daniel 11, verse 40, and we also looked at the history of Germany, which deals with Fatima. Yeah, so in the study, what we saw is that the role of the king of the south in Bible prophecy, suppose one to prevent the rise of the king of the north, or to oppose and fight the king of the north, to restrain the king of the north from taking over the world, and to kill the king of the north. Like in Daniel chapter 11, verse 40, we have the king of the south killing the king of the north, killing the king of the north in 1798. So we saw that that's its role in Bible prophecy. Yeah, and we saw it fulfilling in 1798. We have atheistic France, which killed the 12th schist king of the north. Yeah, it brought that power to an end. Yeah, and also we saw in the history of Hitler, we have the Pope, that history of World War I and World War II, it's a rise of the papacy as the king of the north, which ended in failure. And the power that assisted to that failure was the Soviet Union. It's the king of the south. It worked together with the USA to prevent the papacy papacy and Hitler from taking over the world. So from there, we actually established that the king of the south's role is to prevent the king of the north from taking over the world, to restrain it, to oppose and fight it. Then we also wanted to understand if that is good or if it's bad. We listed some groups which are in opposition to the king of the north in terms of the Bible. And we saw one group is the East Wind. The East Wind, its role also is to fight against the king of the north, bring judgment upon the king of the north. I think we can see that role in Revelation chapter 9, when it starts in chapter 8, when they, like the saints, the prayers of the saints reach heaven due to what they are going through. Then God responds by sending 7 trumpets. And among those trumpets, the 3 of them, which are the 3 wars, it's they are representing an east wind, which is Islam, and its role is to bring judgment on the king of the north. Yeah, so we can see that the east wind also um, is in opposition to the king of the north. We have got Shech, which is Revelation chapter 18, come out of Babylon. Yeah, and Babylon is the king of the north. And we see God's stage also is in opposition to the king of the north. Yeah. And we have also the glorious land, which is the sixth kingdom. Yeah. The ship of Acts 27. And its role was to prevent the king of the north from rising. So, and the king of the south is on that list. Therefore, we concluded that its role is a good one. When we look at the king of the south in that perspective, it's on our side. Yeah, it's on our side when it's fulfilling that role of preventing the king of the north from rising, from taking over the world. Then we identified the king of the north to be, in our time, the Sunday Law movement. Therefore, the duty of the king of the south, just like the glorious land, the sixth kingdom, is to prevent the Sunday Law movement from taking over the world, to restrain king of the north. So that is what we discussed last time. Then we had we had the line. This is the line. It's our history. And in our history, which starts in 1989, we saw that this history is the final rise of the king of the north, which is the seventh kingdom. And if the king of the north will rise in this history, we expect also the king of the south to rise. And what is the role of the king of the south? Its role is to prevent the king of the north from taking over the world, from rising. Yeah, so this is what we expect. So, uh, so in 1989 to the Sunday Law, we have two powers. Yeah, there are many, but I'm just going to mention two, which are have that mission of preventing the king of the north from rising or the Sunday Law movement from succeeding. And those two, one is the king of the south. Yeah, that is the first one. Then number two, it's the sixth kingdom. The sixth kingdom. Yeah. So, and you can see like, so this is how the two powers are supposed to prevent the king of the north from rising. Yeah, there are even others, but yeah, the two in our discussion are enough because their actually failures are actually connected. We'll see when we do a compare and contrast. Prophecy teaches us that this history is the history of success for the king of the north. And if the king of the north succeeds at the Sunday Law, this is success for the king of the north. It implies that the powers ordained by prophecy to prevent the king of the north from rising fail their work. So king of the south will fail at the Sandelo. The other one who fails is the Sixth Kingdom. The Sixth Kingdom also fails. Yeah. So this is these two powers fail their role of restraining, preventing the Sandelo movement or the King of the North from succeeding, from rising. Yeah, and that is what results into a success for the King of the North. So that's where we ended. That's where we ended. Yeah. Um, so we all know that depending with your model, so depending with the model, um, you can either see the rise of the so here on top, like I said, this is the rise of the King of the North. So this is dealing with the King of the North. Yeah, but it also the rise of the King of the South. The King of the South. And yeah, I don't know how to put it. No. So we have this is the rise of the King of the North. And it's also the rise of the King of the South in our time. Yeah, I think before that, we have the King of the South being the Soviet Union, which fulfilled its job. Then later, the King of the South had a showdown with the USA. It collapsed in 1989. Yeah, and the power that brought it down was the purpose when it was attempting to rise. Then in 1989, there we all know if you start the history of the counterfeit, yeah, and we follow history, that was the history of failure. If we follow history, or like the news, which says an angry Pope, like Pope John Paul II, instead of the fall of the Soviet Union to empower the papacy and the papacy to rise as the lead of the world, we see things changed. It's actually the USA. And the USA said, I'm not going to listen to you from this point. And we see the USA like starting to rise, taking that role that was supposed to be taken by the papas. And in this history, we see the USA uh, promoting certain new world order, which is unipolar. Yeah, which is unipolar. That's what we see, like the King of the North rising in that history. Yeah, and also what we should expect in that history, since we have the rise of the king of the north, the final king of the north, which is we call USA 2, which is USA 2. We also need to see the rise of the king of the south. Yeah, in our time, not the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union collapsed there. Then we need to see the rise of the king of the south in this history. Yeah, and this king of the south, which was rising, was actually under, it will be under Putin in this history. Yeah. So we can see that Putin is actually raised to strengthen Russia so that it's capable to restrain and prevent the king of the north from rising. Yeah, from rising. So so that is what we expect. Then also we expect that 2021, yeah, this is 2021. The king of the south starts to fall. Yeah, starts to fall. Yeah. But I want us now to read some things which are dealing with the rise of the king of the south, and I want us to see like Putin's mind at the beginning, yeah, and how Putin used to view things. And I think one of the things we have been cautioned is not to be biased. Yeah, sometimes we become so much blinded, and we start to look at people based like with a biased view. Yeah, an example, maybe if a person is identified in prophecy in one aspect as bad, we end up viewing that person bad, and we neglect the prophetic, our prophetic message. We start to view that person based on what news is telling us, like Western news. And what I mean by that, um, uh, an example is the role of the king of the south is to restrain the king of the north. Yeah. But when you look at what Putin, uh, how the Western media paints him, is this evil person, you know? Yeah, of course he's evil. He does a lot of evil things, killing people and all that. But that shouldn't uh, blind us to the other perspective, which is the prophetic role that Russia is supposed to play. And that prophetic role is to restrain the USA from, and that USA, I mean, it's USA too, the unipolar USA, which is the king of the north, from taking over the world or from rising. Yeah. And we shouldn't be blinded by, you know, by other things. Yeah. I think we are mature enough that now we can look at Martin Luther as good, but also in another perspective as bad. It depends with the perspective. So even with Putin, yeah, I believe he does the killings and all that and all that. But we should also look at the role of the king of the south. Yeah, so I want us to read first before Putin. there was Gorbachev, yeah, and Yeltsin. Yeah, Gorbachev was the leader, I think the last leader under the Soviet Union. And I want us to see the mind of Gorbachev near the end of the Cold War. Yeah. First of all, like we'll read what he said in 1988 and his view of the world. Yeah, especially when he saw where the world was going. Yeah, Russia, like the Soviet Union, was weakened, and it's at a point when probably it can fall, and the USA will remain there. Yeah, and he started sharing his worldview. Yeah, so I want us to read his thoughts. So I'll share the screen. So, so it says the idea of democratizing the entire world order has become a powerful social political force. From this point, further world progress is only possible through the search for a consensus among all humankind to move towards the new world order. However, the principal statement creating the new world order concept came from Mikhail Gorbachev's December 7, 1988 speech to the United Nations General Assembly. His formulation included an extensive list of ideas in creating a new order. He advocated strengthening the central role of the United Nations and the active involvement of all members. The Cold War had prevented the United Nations and its Security Council from performing their roles as initially envisioned. The, de- the de-dualizing of relations among states was the mechanism through which this new level of cooperation could be achieved. Concurrently, Gorbachev recognized only one world economy, essentially, an end to economic blocks. Furthermore, he advocated Soviet entry into several important international organizations, such as the CSCE and International Court of Justice. Reinvigoration of the United Nations peacekeeping role and recognition that superpower cooperation can and will lead to the resolution of regional conflicts was especially key in his conception of cooperation. He argued that the use of force or the threat of the use of force was no longer legitimate, and that the strong must demonstrate restraint towards the weak. As the major powers of the world, he foresaw the United States, the Soviet Union, Europe, India, China, Japan, and Brazil. He asked for cooperation on environmental protection, on debt relief for developing countries, on disarmament of nuclear weapons, on prevention of the ABM Treaty, and on the Convention for the Elimination of Chemical Weapons. At the same time, it promised a significant withdrawal of Soviet forces from Eastern Europe and Asia, as well as an end to the jamming of Radio Liberty. Yeah. So what we can see is Gorbachev. Yeah. So let me draw a line. So we see okay. You are getting me?
You can get yes.
Okay. So what we can see in the history before 1989, so if this is 1989, we see actually Gorbachev in this history. Promoting a new world order. And this new world order, if we look at it critically, it was actually what he was promoting is to strengthen the UN, the United Nations. Yeah. And is recognizing that the Soviet Union, though we might say, okay, is looking at the reality, the Soviet Union is becoming weak, and if it falls, the USA will remain as the world superpower. Yeah, yeah. And what we see Gorbachev is trying to promote the strengthening of the United Nations and people, different countries to work together. Yeah. And I can summarize the concepts of Gorbachev in one word. His new world order was actually globalism. Was globalism. Yeah. So we see Gorbachev is promoting globalism. This is the Soviet Union. Then later, we have the Soviet Union collapsed and Gorbachev resigned and was replaced by Yeltsin. Yeah. So Gorbachev is actually promoting globalism. Then also another leader who I think we know, which is George Bush, who started actually to uh, promote. I'm not going to read about George Bush, but after 1989, we have, you know, George Bush started also promoting his vision of the New World Order. Yeah, he started promoting his vision of the New World Order. Yeah. So I'll just say this is 1989. Then we have Bush, which is Bush Senior, also started promoting his vision of the New World Order. And the type of the New World Order Bush was promoting is is different from what Gorbachev was promoting. It's a world order in which the USA dictates yeah, yeah, what it wants. Yeah, which we actually call unipolar. This is unipolar. And the first demonstration of this world order was the Iraq War, where the USA unilaterally invaded Iraq. Yeah, and acted as the police person of the world. You know, that was the first demonstration of that world order. Yeah, and that is where like we mark the rise of the Seventh Kingdom, because we know the Seventh Kingdom is unipolar. Yeah, it's not globalism. Yeah, and my suggestion um, is if we look at what Gorbachev is trying to do. Yeah, Gorbachev later even worked with the UN, you know. Yeah, and sometimes he could criticize Putin. Yeah, I think he died in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Gorbachev. But we can see that this version wants to promote globalism. Yeah, and we have George Bush, who is going to promote a different world order, which is unipolar, a world dominated and dictated by the USA, uh, with a weak UN, United Nations. Yeah, because the strong UN, it's where the USA acts like together, like equality with other weaker nations in solving the problems of the world. Yeah, but George Bush advocated for the USA as the deciding power. And if the UN says no, the USA will still say, we'll go ahead even if the UN says no. I think if you have followed what happened there in that history, it was the USA which was doing what it wants. So now I want us, then later, we're going to, so if this is 2001, 2001, now we're going to have Putin as a president, like 2002 there. So Putin now is the president. Is the president of Russia. Of Russia. Of course, we are going to see him dealing with in his state, whatever he's doing there, which is bad or good. Yeah. But we have Putin now as the president of Russia. And Putin now will also witness the unipolar, American unipolar behavior with 2003. 2003, what will happen is the USA will again, so we have in 1990, 1991, we have Iraq invaded. It was in 1990. So there is Iraq. Yeah, 2003, we have also Iraq. And the USA used 9/11 as a reason and came up with some conspiracies that Iraq has mass nuclear, mass weapon of destruction. Yeah. And they invaded Iraq. And we're going to see Putin's response to that and what Putin did. So I will read what Putin did. So it says, whatever the exact mix of motivations, Putin's government unsuccessfully teamed up with war-skeptical US allies, France and Germany, to try to prevent the war. From December 2001 until the invasion's eve, Putin repeatedly warned Bush in public and in private that expanding the war on terror to Iraq would be a mistake and that the problem of Iraq should be resolved through the UN and weapons inspections instead of unilateral military force. Putin said he would use his veto power, if necessary, to block any potential UN authorization of force. So this is Putin. From 2001, is saying the US, Putin was the first leader who called the US president when after 9/11 attack, because Putin wanted to have close relationship with the USA. Yeah. Then when the USA was now using the 9/11 attacks to act unipolar, invade countries, overthrow their leadership, and when they wanted to extend that to Iraq, Putin was against, and he sided with the powerful European powers, which is France and Germany. They were also against USA invading Iraq. Then it says Putin warned Bush in public and in private, telling him that Iraq's problem needs to be resolved through the UN, the United Nations. Yeah. So what we can see is Putin is focusing on the UN, that the UN should be the one to resolve issues. Not, then he says, and weapons inspections instead, even the issue to inspect weapons, it shouldn't be of a unilateral military force. Putin is telling the USA, if you are seeking for solutions, whatever problem is with Iraq, there is the UN. And let the UN work this out. You are not supposed to act unilaterally, just alone because you have the power and use your military power to do what you want. Yeah. And Putin assured the USA that if the USA will try to use the UN, manipulate it so that the UN authorizes that use of military power, Russia is going to veto it, to stop that, vote against it. Yeah, so that is what Russia said. And it continues to say, the Russian President Vladimir Putin says the US-led war in Iraq was unjustified because it was not authorized by the United Nations Security Council. So again, Russia reminds the USA, this is Putin, that there are rules in this world. There is the UN. You can't do something, invade another country without authority from the UN. Putin continues, the use of force abroad, according to the existing international laws, can only be sanctioned by the United Nations. This is the international law. Mr. Putin said in an annual live televised question and answer session, everything that is done without the UN Security Council's sanction cannot be recognized as fair or justified. Everything that is done without the UN Security Council cannot be recognized as fair and justified. I am being as restrained as I can be when I choose these words, he said. Yeah. He said, the comments came only hours before Mr. Putin was due to meet in Moscow with US envoy James Baker, who is trying to convince the international community to write off Iraq's crushing 120 billion debts. Mr. Putin, who opposed the war in Iraq, described the United States as a partner but said the Iraq campaign should not be lumped in with the broader international war on terrorism. We do not want the United States to lose their war on terrorism. We are US partners in the fight against terrorism, Mr. Putin said. He also suggested that the United States may be suffering from overconfidence on the international sphere, warning that empires had fallen before from feeling too strong and using their military might indiscriminately. I might say that in all times, great countries, empires, always suffered a series of problems that complicated their situation. This was a feeling of invulnerability, a feeling of grandeur, a feeling that it never sins, Mr. Putin said. This always hate countries that try to call themselves empires. I very much hope that this does not happen to our American partners. Moscow has been furious with Washington in recent days for barring countries that oppose the Iraqi war in participating in the lucrative first phase of reconstruction projects in the war-torn country. Russia warned the United States on Tuesday that it was unacceptable to make such a decision. Yeah. So what I've read, what is Putin saying in this history is promoting the new world order. And this new world order, it's an order which is globalism. And it's Putin who is lecturing the USA in regards to this invasion. Putin is saying, we have the UN, we have international laws, rules. And if there is an issue, we need to work within those rules. Which power created those rules, the rule-based order? Is it Russia or the USA? Which power created those rules? Russia or the USA?
USA.
Yes, it's the USA. And it's the USA which is breaking those rules. And what is Putin doing? Reminding and lecturing the USA. If you look at the quotation, like the words of Putin I was reading, they sound very prophetic. Putin says, we have seen, Putin is a student of history, studies history very much. That we have seen great empires who thought they're untouchable, and when they had that power, they misuse that power, and what followed is the downfall. And he's even saying, we don't wish that the USA makes the same mistake that other great powers did. Then he tells the USA, we want you to win the fight against terror. We want you to win that. But that doesn't mean we should keep quiet when you're doing it in a wrong way, like trying to invade countries and also preventing countries to help the reconstruction of Iraq. Putin is saying that's wrong. And by the way, the action of the USA were not sanctioned by the UN. Yeah. And we see Putin is working in conjunction with some of the European powers opposing the USA unilateralism. So, was Putin wrong in that time? Was he wrong? Hmm? Was he wrong?
No,
Was right.
Exactly. Putin wasn't wrong. So Putin wasn't wrong. So the action of the USA was actually unipolar. That was unipolar. Yeah. So we see Putin is actually promoting globalism. Yeah. I don't care whether he's pretending or not, but we're not supposed to be biased. Is acting perfectly. That is the role that is supposed to play of the King of the South, preventing the King of the North from rising unipolar. Yeah. And is doing that. Yeah. We can see the USA was wrong and it was right. Yeah. Now, did the USA listen? Did the USA listen? They didn't. Yeah. The response of the USA is, who are you? You can't compare to us in terms of military. So you can't dictate what we should do or not. We'll do whatever that we want. Then what other thing did George Bush do in this history? Which also so so what Putin was seeing is that there is this global order, rule-based order which the USA created. And Putin started seeing that these rules only matter to serve the US interest. If the USA wants to do something which goes against these rules, the USA will do whatever it wants without following these rules. But if another nation tries to do the same, it will be panicked by the USA. So that is what Putin was observing. At first, he was advocating for like everyone to like be following these rules. Yeah. And then later, he recognized that actually the USA doesn't live by these rules. The only solution, if you have power, you do whatever that you want. Then there is another thing that George Bush did. Yeah, I think by mm, um, if I'm not mistaken, 20 before George Bush like left power, he had to expand NATO very much. So let me see some notes of mine if I have something. Like how NATO expanded. Yes. So in 2004, you know, back then, 1989, part of the assurances that the USA made verbally so that the Soviet Union, Russia can agree to allow Germany to be united and to join NATO is that NATO is not going to expand further east. Yeah. But what happened there in 1999, NATO expanded. Yeah, like Czech Republic was added, Hungary and Poland. But there was a bigger expansion in 2004. 2004, Bush actually added Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia. About 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 7 countries added to NATO. 7 countries added to NATO. And this was a violation of some verbal agreements which the USA and the Soviet Union was like talking about. Yeah, the USA didn't take those seriously. They just took those assurances as means to unify Germany, yeah, and to add Germany to NATO. But Russia took them very serious. If you study like piracy in Italy, there was actually agreements between Tarentum and Rome that Rome shouldn't expand and place towards the south and place its military towards the Gulf of Tarentum. Yeah, Rome didn't care about those assurances because they had an ambition to expand, but Tarentum cared because they were weak and preventing themselves. Uh, yeah, protecting their sphere of influence. And we saw Rome broke that. And that is the story. Yeah, where those verbal agreements, the USA didn't care about them, but Russia cared, especially Putin. And in 2004, one of the reasons why Bush added like more countries to NATO, about 7 of them, during this war on terror, the USA, was losing like support. You have France, Germany, and other who were against what it was doing. And George Bush further wanted support from other countries. Yeah, I may be wrong. These are just vague thoughts which I remember. Then he ended up even like adding more countries to NATO. And most of these countries were under the sphere of influence of Russia or during the Soviet Union, like all of them, they were actually eastward. And Putin saw that, recognized that, and is like, no, it seems the USA doesn't respect us at all. Yeah. So we have these issues. One, we have America not following its own rules. It showed that if you have the military mighty, you can do whatever that you want. And Putin tries to lecture the USA to actually follow those globalist principles, respect the UN, and only to resolve things via the UN. Yeah, not through military force unilaterally. The USA didn't follow that. Then later, you have that addition of 7 countries into NATO. So Putin is seeing all those activities uh, like against what the USA assured Russia verbally in 1989s, 1990s. Yeah. And now, due to that, what I want us to see is Putin now will be angry. And from in 2007, Putin is going to give a speech. So in 2007, Putin is done with the USA. From 2001, he was trying to see how he can work with the USA and trying to like fit in this world of the USA. Then what he learned from the USA is that these rules which the USA promotes, they are not followed by the USA. What matters is what the USA wants. If these rules goes against the USA still does whatever that it wants. Yeah. Doesn't respect the Security Council, the UN and all that. That is what he learned. Yeah. And the other thing is those assurances that the USA made, it didn't follow them. Yeah. And that led now to the Munich speech. Munich speech. And in that speech, it was like Putin now, like completely now he says, we are done with this USA globalism, whatever the USA promotes. I'm done. Yeah, yeah. So I'll read part of uh, the speech of Putin as we like wrap up and conclude. So I want us to pay attention to what Putin was saying. Yeah. And in 2007, Bush is still a president. Yeah. So I'll read. You can go and read the entire speech. It's good. Yeah, but I'll just take some parts. Yeah. So Putin says, today we are witnessing an almost uncontained hyper use of force, military force. In international relations, force that is plunging the world into an abyss of permanent conflicts. I want us to see this Putin. Then you compare with the Putin we have today. You can see that right now he's doing all those things that he was opposing the USS from doing. Yeah, yeah. But I want us to see like what he was saying. And now we'll see like how he changed. Yeah. So he said, so today we are witnessing an almost uncontained hyperuse of force, military force, in international relations, force that is plunging the world into an abyss of permanent conflicts. As a result, we do not have sufficient strength to find a comprehensive solution to any of these conflicts. Finding a political settlement also means impossible. We are seeing a great and greater distance for the basic principles of international law. So he's saying we are seeing that people, particularly the USA, they don't like the basic principles of the international law. And independent legal norms are, as a matter of fact, coming increasingly closer to one state's legal system. So he's saying independent legal norms, they are coming closer to the one state's legal system. One state, and of course, first and foremost, the United States, has overstepped its national borders in every way. This is visible in the economic, political, cultural, and educational policies it imposes on other nations. Well, who likes this? Who is happy about this? Yeah, so Putin is identifying the USA as a primary nation which is breaking the international law. Yeah. he continues to say, I am convinced that the only mechanism that can make decisions about using military force as a last resort is the Charter of the United Nations. So Putin is saying a country has got no authority to use military force against the other unilaterally. But the only body which has that authority, it's the United Nations through its charter. And in connection with this, either I did not understand what our colleague, the Italian defense minister, just said, or what he said was inexact. In any case, I understood that the use of force can only be legitimate when the decision is taken by NATO, the EU, or the UN. If he really does think so, then we have different points of view, or I didn't hear correctly. So this is Putin who is lecturing the defense minister, one of the defense minister, who said that the use of military force can be, that decision can be viewed to be legitimate when NATO or the EU or the UN has made that decision. Then Putin is saying, if it is like that, then we differ. Then Putin is going to explain his view. The use of force can only be considered legitimate if the decision is sanctioned by the UN. That was good. So Putin is saying, we cannot say this is legitimate if the decision has been made by NATO. Because who is NATO? NATO is the USA. That is a body that the USA uses to project its power. Then the EU also, we can't, because NATO is not the world, the EU is not the world, but the UN represents everyone. And Putin is saying only when the UN sanctions something, that is when we can view it as legitimate. Yeah. Then he continues, and we do not need to substitute the NATO or the EU for the UN. When the UN would truly unite the forces of the international community and can really reach to events in various countries, when we will leave behind this distance for the international law, then the situation will be able to change. So he's saying solutions can be found, which in regards to problems affecting the world, when we regard the UN as important, all nations unite and use the UN. And also that hatred for international law is removed. Then solutions will be found. Otherwise, the situation will simply result in a dead end, and the number of serious mistakes will be multiplied. Along with this, it is necessary to make sure that international law have a universal character both in the conception and application of its norms. And my question was Putin wrong in his ways? Yeah, he might have a mission and his one agenda, but just at a surface level. Is he wrong in what he was saying? Hmm? Yeah. If you read the speech, then he's going to say, everyone is afraid, everyone is in fear. And that is in like against the USA. So what we see now, Putin, this was, and I think he even like said that what I'm going to say is going to like make people angry, but people should bear with me. Some things have to be said. Yeah. And this is when Putin, like at this council, he had to show that he's done with this issue of like the global world and all that and all that. Yeah. And it was like a declaration of war. I think that is how some understood it, that this was now like a declaration of war. Yeah, on the West. Yeah. He can't take it anymore. He's done with the USA. Yeah. So he's done with the USA. Yeah. Then my question is, who was the president? Who was the president? The president was Bush. What kind of a conservative was Bush? A neo or a paleo? Yeah, I'm winding up. A neocon or a paleo? Bush. Hey, no one knows? Okay, Timothy saying seems to have forgotten. Yeah. So so here what we can see is Putin hated the neocon, neocons. Yeah. These are Republicans. Yeah. The Bushes. And these are because the establishments, Republicans, who follow the doctrine of Ronald Reagan. Yeah, in terms of foreign policy. Yeah. So Putin hated them. Why? Because of their foreign policy. Foreign policy. And these ones, I think the cases presentations helps us to understand the problem with neocons. The neocons, they believe in intervention, but with what reason? Nationalism, that form of nationalism where uh, they think um, like America is the glorious land, that pride. Therefore, they need to uh, like it's the city upon the mountain. Yeah, and they need to force others to live by the demands of the USA. Yeah, yeah. So it's that form of yeah. That is the mentality of the neocons. Yeah, they think they are the powerful nations with its military. Therefore, they should dictate the demands of like what they want the world. And Putin hated them. Yeah, and the hatred I've explained where it developed. At the beginning, Putin was close and wanting to work with USA. Then the behavior of the neocons, it's actually what now enraged Putin against them. And in 2007, it's done with them. Then 2008 elections, and the Obama is going to win, and Obama is a Democrat. Yeah. So I'll read one last quote, then we'll close from there. Yeah. So yeah, I think if you check over NATO expansion, yeah, I've talked about it, and there's a quotation. So now we'll go. Obama is the president, and there will be the issue to do with the Gaddafi. You know, so there's a point Putin was a prime minister. He stepped down because the terms ended. I think it must be in yeah, in 2008. He stepped down, I think, and he was appointed the prime minister, but the president was Medvedev. Yeah. And during that time, we see the Democrats wanting to reset relationships with Russia. And Medvedev was the president, yeah, in Russia, and Obama was the president in the USA. Then the issue to do with Gaddafi. Yeah. So I'll just read these quotes. It says, but one event is missing. So this writer of this article is trying to explain what created Putin to be like that. And the writer will be saying a lot of things. Then the writer will focus on something that people have missed. Yeah, I think this the text also mentioned this one. So he said, but one event is missing from this analysis. An episode that combines political and emotional aspects and helped crystallize Putin's distrust of the West, his own sense of vulnerability, and his ultimate decision to return as Russia's president. In 2011, NATO-led intervention in Libya that resulted in the violent death of the country's ascetic dictator Muammar Gaddafi. U.S. administration officials such as then Vice President Joe Biden pressed the issue with Dmitry Medvedev, Russia's president at the time, and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton helped seal the deal with Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov over the phone, standing backstage at a television studio after a tour war event in Tunis. The UN resolution authorized all necessary measures to protect civilians in Libya, which included but was not limited to a no-fly zone. Russia would not approve the resolution, so the Obama administration was hoping that it would at least abstain rather than veto the move. During the vote at the Security Council, Simon said, this is important, and the Arab League and the Arab countries are behind us, Clinton told Lavrov. Medvedev agreed to abstain, and a few hours later, the vote passed. Within a few days, the military campaign over Libya skies began. So what was happening here is Putin is the prime minister, Medvedev is the president. Then Joe Biden was the vice president back then. Then Hillary Clinton was the secretary of state. So Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton, they try to force Medvedev not to veto in the UN so that the UN authorizes the use of force in Libya. And they knew that Medvedev won't agree, who vote against. Therefore, they convinced Medvedev to abstain from voting. Yeah. And if Medvedev abstains, the UN will finally authorize the use of force in Libya. And what happened is Medvedev was convinced to abstain. Yeah. And immediately abstained. It was a win for Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden as the vice president, the Obama administration. And the military campaign started in Libya. The writer continues, Putin also believed that Medvedev had been naive. In his book, All the Kremlin's Men, Mikhail Zygda, a former editor-in-chief of the independent Russian TV station REN, writes that Putin's Tuareg whispered in his ear, Medvedev betrayed Libya. He will betray you as well. So you see what Putin saw and what they told him, that you see what Medvedev has done. Medvedev has betrayed Libya and will betray you also. Yeah, because of not vetoing the USA's use of military force in Libya. Medvedev has expressed sympathy with the protesters in the Arab world and their democratic aspirations, and would later be accused of having had a hand in Russian protests months later against the alleged vote rigging, the largest demonstration the country had seen since the fall of the Soviet Union. All of these factors only added to Putin's paranoia. So when Putin saw the protests which were happening in Arab states, and also Medvedev not vetoing that, Putin was now like even scared of himself. Ziga writes that Putin was apoplectic when Gaddafi was killed. According to several accounts, including current CIA chief William Burns' book, The Back Channel, Putin frequently replayed the gruesome footage of Gaddafi being captured in a drainage pipe, being beaten to death. The capture, trial, and execution of Saddam Hussein did not seem to affect Putin as much. He had flippantly told French President Nicolas Sarkozy that he would hang Georgian President Mikhail Saakashvili just as Americans had hanged Saddam Hussein. But the lesson Putin drew from Libya was different. Being a pariah had served Gaddafi best. Only when he had opened up to the West had they come after him. So this is Putin now. Putin, the death of Gaddafi, he replayed it frequently. And in other articles, it's reported that once he saw that video, he said never again. That was a done thing now. And that is when Putin now saw that the only safety is when you are a pariah, because when a pariah is like you distance yourself from the global world and you're just doing your own things without following these, like how North Korea is. Yeah. And because he saw it that when Gaddafi opened to the West, what was the end? The end is the death of Gaddafi. Then he also saw that the USA manipulates the UN and everything to suit its mission. And the outcome is death. And when Putin saw that, he saw that the only way through which I can survive and protect Russia is me running for president again. And once I go there, there is no way I'm going to leave. He saw it very crucial to protect his life. And also now, he was made up with this USA. Once he comes into power, he will never regard the international law. He will be invading countries, doing his own things, and also using the very UN now for his own advantage, not to promote the rule-based order, what he was saying. It would just be something else. Yeah, that is how like Putin now was fully now like done with the West. So that was in 2011, and we are going to end there. So that is 2011, which is the death of Gaddafi. Gaddafi. And also Saddam Hussein was killed by the Obama administration. And he was telling the French president that I will also hang my enemies the same way you hanged Saddam Hussein. So at this point, uh, um, Putin completely done with West or UN. Yeah, this time is now saying, is not saying, let's strengthen the UN and all that is done. Yeah. Then Putin is going to hate. Putin hated who? Who is Putin going to hate now? Is it Republicans? Hmm?
No, Democrats.
Exactly, it's Democrats now. So Putin now hated, and those Democrats, it's the centralists. I don't know, center. How do you write the centralist? I don't know with the spelling. Okay, Democrats. The Democrats. This is the Bidens. So we have Clinton, Hillary Clinton. So H. Clinton, and the Bidens, the Obamas, the Bidens. These are, it's going to hate these because of their foreign policy. This is the transformation that Putin was going to. So he's going to hate these. And by this time, it's none. It has nothing to do with the West now. Yeah, it has nothing to do with that. Yeah, so we'll come and continue. Now we'll see what Putin will start doing. So we'll come and start from 2014. Yeah. So it's done. Now, so at this point, Putin is done. He hates the neocons, the Republicans, the establishment Republicans. He hates the centrist Democrats, the Clintons and the Bidens. This is one of the reasons why in 2016, when he just saw Clinton there as a Democratic nominee, presidential nominee, he's like, no way, no way, no, I'm not gonna allow that. Yeah. But so by this time you reach to 2011, so far we can see the King of the South has lost it now, the mind. Yeah, the hatred, in one aspect, you can see like the USA contributed to that. Yeah, the rules that they created, breaking them. Yeah, breaking those rules. Yeah, and which actually now in Putin, it's creating this monster. Yeah. Now Putin's hatred, the sad part is these groups is hating. These groups is hating. Their activities, this sin, what they did, these people, it will lead into one, the rise of mega. in this history. It's what these neocons did and what the Democrats did in this. There will be the mega which will rise. And also what this did is now the kind of Putin who is different from the beginning. And this Putin hated these the centrist Democrats and the neocons. And it's interesting, when he hated these, we have shown in the other studies which group of people prevent the Sunday law in the USA. The ones who bring the Sunday law is the paleocons. And the group of people who were restraining the paleocons or mega, it's these two, the neocons and the centrists, the Democrats, the establishment Republicans and the centrist Republicans. These are the ones designed who were preventing the mega movement from taking over the country. Yeah, the neocons, they are preventing mega from taking over the Republicans. And the Democrats preventing mega from taking over the world. And Putin is going to hate this due to their actions. And just there, Putin lost it. Now, from 2014 onward, Putin will be revenging against this. And once he hated this, he has placed himself like in a very awkward situation because mega will start to rise. And mega will oppose these groups and it will have policies which opposes these two. And the mega is a Sunday law movement. And what is Putin going to support? That group. Yeah. So I think today I will end here. At least I've tried to explain how Putin was changing. And part of the ones to blame is the USA. Yeah. And we see Putin changing. And now, by the time you are reaching 2014, Putin hates the neocons and Putin hates the centrist Democrats. And these groups Putin hated, they are the ones designed to restrain mega. And just there, Putin lost track. And we are going to see the Russia 2014 onwards. It's not the Russia which is going to be restraining against the Seventh Kingdom. But it's a Russia which will be working to destroy these. It will be now revenge. Yeah, and Putin will organize Russia to suit his image and not even to allow anybody to take power in Russia who is going to sympathize with this. And that is what will lead to the downfall of Russia as the king of the South. Yeah, I think I'm done. Today, what I wanted us to see is how Russia started this issue to do with globalism, and the USA was promoting unipolar. And we see also Putin advocated for globalism when the USA was not following the rules that it created, acting unipolar. It was Russia, Putin, who was restraining the USA, but it was, of course, weak. Then, as the USA continued abusing its power and further expanding NATO, yeah, we see Putin starting to change. Yeah. And in the process, by the time you reach 2007, Putin is like saying, I'm done with the West. Yeah. They don't follow these rules. They break them. They are not respecting international law and all that. I'm done with this liberal whatever order. Yeah, and it surprised and shocked the USA, but they didn't take him serious still. Then in 2011, when he was not a president, he's seen what is happening to Gaddafi. And he saw it that this might also now come to me. For survival, yeah, and to make sure that that doesn't take place anymore, Putin was assured that I need to be a president. That's when now it's going to come back in 2012. Yeah. So, and by that time now, he hates the Democrats, establishment Democrats, and the establishment Republicans. And that was now where the mistake is. Yeah, with Putin. He hated now the very people later were designed to restrict the Seventh Kingdom mega. Yeah, and in 2014, he's going to align himself with mega, which will lead to the downfall of the King of the South. So come and continue on Thursday. Any question and the contribution? It's welcome. No questions, no contribution. Okay, it seems it's fine. We can pray. Yeah, pray. We say thank you, Lord, for the time you gave us to study the words, looking at history, and we see the mistakes of the USA and the mistakes that the King of the South made. Hatred and revenge can blind someone even to fail to do correct things. We are seeing also the same behavior with mega filled with hatred and revenge. Yeah. Help us, Lord, to love one another and not to have a vengeful spirit. Thank you, Lord, for these messages, for they are helping us to understand the histories we are in. Bless us all as a ministry and as a movement at large. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.